I forgot to press the record. Sorry, I'm recording it now. We're in the midst of a change that is unprecedented. And not only is our teams the secret to our success historically, they are more and more important, not less important, to our success in the future. And they're the essence of what it means to be a leader. So, what does that mean? Remember when we're talking about different styles of leadership, whether the leader is somebody who just exploits other resources, or whether it's a team that, you know, the leader is growing and developing for the sake of team win. The fundamentals of working in a team is that together we can achieve things that the individual cannot. That we develop synergy. That two individuals working together develop results that are more than two, they're 3, 4, 5 in terms of effectiveness. Humans, as you can see in the pictures, we're doing enormous things. You know, they're hunting mammoth. You cannot do that. The same in business now, it's same in leadership. It is essential that everybody feels there is a win-win here. And the essence of everything we're going to talk about, and we're going to come to this full circle at the end of this lecture, is that unless you play a win-win where the team wins, there's a problem. You cannot have a situation where the leader wins and the people in the team fail. That's not the essence of how teams work. It's about working together, aligning together for a joint win. And it's the golden rule, irrespective of what culture you're in, irrespective of what kind of activity you're taking part, the golden rule, as they call it, is do unto others as you'd want to have them do unto you. How do you want to be treated? How do you want you know, your colleagues to be? I mean, we talked about this, I think, when we talked about the Bushmen, I think, in terms of how they work as a team when they go hunting. And that's the essence of what we're going to talk about today. So, the subject, high-performing teams, the characteristics of those within a global context. And then we're going to talk about leading virtual teams as well. The leading virtual teams wasn't such a huge top subject before because of Zoom and what's going on. And we're the living example of that now as a team. You know, you are thousands of miles away. And we've not had the chance to meet face to face, not had the chance to eat together, drink together, get to know each other as human beings, and we're working virtually. And it requires a completely different and more effort to make it as effective as if we're making face to face. At least that's my assumption, but we'll be talking about that as well. Okay? So, why have a team at all? The reason that we have a team, now let me see, is not everybody can know everything. The information doesn't flow all through one person, and it cannot, and it shouldn't. You cannot see the problem from every angle. What we say is 2 heads is better than 1. 10 heads is better than 2. Different perspectives, different angles, different information. The team could hit bigger goals. In general, there's a lot of evidence, and I'll be sharing that when we talk about diversity. Evidence from McKinsey, research that done with Bain, research done with other big consultancies that prove the more involvement from the biggest, most diverse group, the better the quality of the business decision making and the better results the business and the organization achieve. Absolutely proved. I think up to 35% improvement in the business decisions, if I remember the figures right. You can also keep looking for, you know, unlooked for risk. You can't all be aware of everything that's going on in every field, in every market, with every competition. But the team many pairs of eyes and ears, listening. What's going on? Is there something we should be aware of? Is there something we should do something about? Of course, team members also learn from each other, working on your own, even if you're an introvert. You need other people. You need other people to help you make it more fun, make it more interesting. You can do big things, as we said, plus you stop duplication. Think of the efficiency savings. You know, who takes the notes? One person takes the notes, for example, as an example. One person, for example, does the budget. You divide the role, you specialize, you give the job not just to the best person. That job is done once. Not everybody has to do it again and again. That means you don't miss deadlines if somebody is missing. The team covers for each other. Today I'm sick. Somebody will come in and do what I need to do. I have support, I have backup. Or I don't know how to do something, they'll come and help me do that. And the whole organization of the team often becomes self-managing. You know, we end up learning how to work together over time. And we'll talk about that in one of the other slides going forward about how that works. And we can achieve much, much greater things. Look at the stuff that's going on in the world. Look at the achievements of companies and countries and scientific teams, artistic teams. None of it is work of an individual. All of it is the team. So teams are essential. So what is a team? Lots of definitions. Here's just the one I picked up. It's a number of interdependent people. That's important. They rely on each other. They need each other in order to be successful. They have complementary skills, but also styles. It doesn't say that there, but I believe that. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And they're committed to making things work together in a collective way where they make more success than as individuals. And they hold each other accountable for the team results. Now, this last one is where a lot of the problems might occur, because clearly there are teams that are dysfunctional. And often one of the main reasons the teams are dysfunctional is because an individual in the team feels that they could be a winner where in a situation where the rest of the team or other individuals in the team can be failures. There are situations where individuals are made to take the rap, take the blame for a team failure. I'm almost sure that there have been situations in politics and elsewhere where even people have been appointed to a team just so that they could be blamed. Those things are real. Those are real things that happen in the real world. But what we're talking about what makes a great team. And in a great team, that doesn't happen. The team as a whole sign on to the goal and they win together or fail together. And that is a sign of what is a team. Because you might have a name that says, okay, you're a so-and-so team. But if you don't act like it, you're not really a team. And in each team, at different times, different people may take the lead. There might be a formal leader, but we are all in multiple teams, and at different times in those multiple teams, we need to be good team members as well as good team leaders. So this concept of, okay, I'm the leader, I don't have to be a good team member is rubbish. You cannot be a good team leader if you've not got the capability to be a good team member. I always just say to my team, I remember, you know, one of my team came to me and said, look, I want to be an HR director. What do I need to do? What HR courses do I need to go on? And I have a normal mantra that I say to people, that first, you have to be a trustworthy human being that people want to engage with and work with on a long term. Unless you have that, forget it. Second thing, you need to be a decent team member and leader, and the capability of doing that has nothing to do with your function. Third, if you're in a business, You need to understand that business and be a good business person. Last is your functional expertise. Now, last week we talked about how so many of the problems we face is because people are selected for expat positions or even for leadership or whatever, as we said at the first session, because of the technical skills. That is also true of selection for a team. So you look at the team with this objective and say, you know what? I need an IT person in that team. Find somebody from IT. Bang. I need somebody from finance. Bang, somebody from finance. I need someone to do the administration. Here's an administrator. I need a project manager. Here's someone from the PM office. At no time do you normally stop and say, is that person's style complementary to us? Is that somebody I've worked with in the past and I think they will be a great team member and I want to work with them? More mature teams, more mature environments, they do. And they almost ask for people to volunteer, because when they volunteer, of course, they're showing their commitment by volunteering. And that is already taking you down a very good path. But most of the time, you're selecting people, again, for technical reasons. Now, I think I've said this to you before, but I don't mind if you don't mind me saying it again. According to Ashridge Business School, 80% of technology projects fail for non-technical reasons. I can tell you that almost, I don't know, 57% of mergers and acquisitions fail to deliver the synergies promised, and they fail for non-technical reasons. They fail because of the people not wanting to work together to make it successful, to create synergies. I've seen that. All those people who are formally put into your team, who are not committed to you as a team, are working against you. They're not just not adding value, they're taking value away. They are briefing against you, saying bad things. They distance themselves from you privately, where there's no risk to them. They say, you know, these guys don't know what they're doing. I'm just there, you know, but I'm really, and you'll see their behavior in the meetings. They say what is right to say, or they do the minimum, but they will not commit. They're not really in your team. That's what I'm saying. They might be formally in your team, but they're not really in your team. So what normally happens as a person who's building a team, they give the supposed leader a project or a task. And before you've even got into the team, that person and the stakeholder who gave them the task defines what is the project, what's the scope, what do they need to do. And, you know, they and their closest people evaluate what's happening, what's going on right now. Then they develop the team, they bring people in who can help them then with design. Yeah, we need somebody to do an IT system. Let's bring an IT person in. Not at the beginning, then. Oh, we're going to need to recruit some people. Oh, let's bring the HR people now. You haven't brought the team together in the beginning to agree and sign on to the objective. You bring in them as and when you need them. But they're emotionally, therefore, only going to deliver the minimum that you ask them to. They're not emotionally committed to the big topic. I'm just explaining to you what normally happens, as opposed to, here's the project, let me bring the whole team together, and together we define the objective. Together we define where are we now. Together we design the solutions. Together we identify who else we're going to need and who's going to do what, even now. What capability, what training, what skill that person's going to need. How are we going to measure progress? How are we going to measure progress, evaluate it in a way where we could modify the resources, modify what we're doing? This is the process that normally happens most of the time badly, because the leader takes too much ownership, thinks of it in a very technical way, and brings people in as and when they need them, rather than create a team with a confirmed commitment to delivering an objective together. Because the team cohesion takes time, and we'll go through what those steps are in order to build the team cohesion together. But first, you create awareness, understanding of what we're trying to do, what support and resources are available. They agree to participate. They show their commitment by providing time and results. Then you create models and structures about how you're going to manage the team, what the feedback model is, when they're going to report back. And then at some point, they internalize it. In other words, with internalization, they have a sense of belonging and sense of ownership. This is my team, and I am committed to delivering what its objectives are. It takes time to do that. And the more involved you make the people and the earlier you involve them, the faster you go through this. Because there's a word that defines all of this here. What do you think that word is? One word. That word is trust. Remember what I said at the very beginning. How do I know that these team colleagues are not going to stab me in the back? I'm not the fall guy. They're not going to blame me to the rest of the organization or to risk my job, risk my future career by blaming me for things going wrong. How do I know I can take risks? How do I know I can stick my neck out, as we say? How do we know that, you know, I'm going to commit and be completely and visibly associated with this team? That happens when you create trust. Trust doesn't come easy. One very quick story for you guys that taught me trust. I used to have 3 Japanese Daiso 100 yen plazas in London. I bought one, and then I set up more, and I needed a Japanese person to go to Japan and buy the products for me. Later on, I bought them from the Chevalier Group in China, but at that time, it was all Japanese stuff. And so I brought in a partner who was going to finance the expansion, and then also with his Japanese wife, go to Japan and buy the products for us and do the deals. A year on, things were not. Things were going incredibly well from the business point of view. In other words, we went from £2,500 a week to £15,500 a week sales, 63% margin, 37% net profit. I mean, it was brilliant. It was going really well. But you know, my partners wanted to take the business over. I had a model where I was discussing it with a friend of mine called Wing Yip that owned some very, very large Chinese shopping centers here. And my model was I was going to have the shops purely as a display area, and I was going to do concessions within Wing Yip's giant stores, and he just takes a percentage. And my products sit on a shelf, and he sells them, and he does everything. So the idea was a franchise, but like that. And we couldn't agree on the model. Anyway, I realized one day that they had over-ordered products to a tune of 6 months worth of stock, and that we'd run out of cash, even though we had all this money, so that we wanted to put me under pressure. And I took Martin out for a drink, who was my partner. And I said, Martin, what's going on? I said, look, my wife wants to take over the business. I said, you know what? Instead of us having a fight, let's bring in 2 or 3 people to offer us to buy the business. We value the business. We get our accountant to value business. We go together to our lawyer, agree a single sales agreement, and then we decide who buys who out, so we don't fall out and we stay friends, and everything's okay, because otherwise the business is going to suffer. So we did that. And we went for an amazing meal in an amazing Chinese restaurant, China City in Dorchester. And at the end of the meal, we tossed a coin. And the person who won was Martin. And the idea was the winner decides to buy or sell. And he agreed to buy me out. We'd already agreed the price. There was no negotiation. Anyway, the next day I was out. I go home And my wife says, Martin's been around and left you a carrier bag. I open the carrier bag. Inside the carrier bag is in cash the first installment of the sale. Now, we hadn't signed a contract. I hadn't committed to anything. I could have gone and emptied the shops. I could have taken all the money from the bank account, but Martin had put himself in my hand. He had shown me trust, and I immediately realized the pressure on me that I'm not going to be a worse person than Martin. I'm going to show trust back. I couldn't negotiate even one item with him because of how I felt about how much he trusted me. Trust is a two-way street. The leader shows how it's done. The rest of the team followed their lead. That's why it's called the leader. They set the tone. They set the culture. So when I talk about trust here, it is far more important for the leader to demonstrate how that works, and the rest of the team will then follow. Now, I've over-egged it, and the story maybe took too long, but believe me, this is fundamental to what we're talking about team cohesion, about team skill. So what do you think are the characteristics of good teamwork? What makes a good team? You guys. Let's hear from you guys. Any suggestions? It's gone to sleep again. I can't see the thingy. Hang on, let me just see if I can. Hello? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, we're back. It went to sleep as usual. Sorry, but I've learned the trick of how to come back. Did you guys hear what I said before? What do you think is the characteristics of a great team?
To both sides trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
How do you create trust?
Like you need to be like doing the things. A leader need to be doing the things more like maybe effectively, or like can make your employee or the group member trust you. You can done the things 100% with 100%, and you can give them hope.
Help, that's right. So I agree with you. So they feeling that they're supported by each other and especially by the leader. 100% agree. Very good point. You know,
Yes.
they feel they're not on their own. They're not at risk. The team here is there to support them, especially the leader. What else? Anybody else? Okay, I'll tell you. So trust comes from open communication. If there's something wrong, you speak about it. You know, a lot of time, the worst case scenario is the team is not functioning, but they're not saying it. People are not satisfied. People are not committed, but they're not saying it. That way, the problem continues. So open communication is the starting point because that shows trust. For you to go and say, look, things are going wrong. Something's not right for me, shows you trust them. If you don't trust them, you don't open yourself up by saying that because you're opening up to potential conflict. And that sets the scene for creating a culture. Playing by collective rules is culture. How you make decisions under different circumstances. Remember, we talked about different styles, different situations for leadership. The more you involve the team in the decision making, the better the decision, the more emotional commitment the team have to the decision that's been made. Agreeing the common goal of achieving it, but also having a common goal. all the team members feeling that they are participating, that their participation is valued. Remember what we said about human needs. And all of this leads to mutual respect and support. Okay? Is there anything else other than that that you guys can see that you think is key that's not mentioned here? Okay. So here is my list. I think a high-performing team is tight, close, personal. They trust each other, they're friends, they like each other, they value and respect each other, like we said. They must have complementary skills. A very good friend of mine, a gentleman called Hedley Bowen, he was Welsh. He died last week. And he taught me this. Hedley and I were very similar in our type, in our approach. And so we enjoyed each other's company. He was much older than me. But we spent a lot of time together. We ran a lot of projects and programs together, and we always had similar ideas. We always had same approach. So for me, working with Hedley was easy. Working with him was fun. Working with him was fulfilling, because he was getting from me what he needed, and I was giving him what he needed. But you know what? That wasn't creating the synergy, because he was like two Masouds, as opposed to, no, there's somebody else who has a different way, a different approach, and that person can bring something that I don't have. Now, that person might be uncomfortable for me. That person might not be fun for me. That person might take a lot of energy and emotional energy even from me. But that person is helping me and the team be more successful because they're bringing something new to the table that I don't have. And none of us are perfect. We all have blind spots. All you can do is be the best version of what you can be, and to make the use of your strength to have the most value add, the most impact you can have. You can never get rid of your weaknesses completely, but other people who have their strength, that's your weakness, that is a sure way for the team to create synergy. That requires you to have a common purpose with very specific measures of goals, so that you know what success looks like. Often teams have very vague objectives. Doesn't work, because then everybody else presupposes what success looks like. You need to have the same picture. That means measurement. And then the common approach. And lastly, and most importantly, we've said it before, 100% mutual accountability. It should not be possible for someone to win when somebody else in the team loses. If that's the case, don't include them in the team or exit them from the team, because that will destroy the team. Also, I want to talk about skills in team membership, because like we said, it's impossible for people to be great leaders or whatever if they're not good team members. So the first thing is being active, really participating, really adding value with your heart and soul, with your time, to behave in a way that's in line with the culture, with what you've agreed, to share your knowledge and wisdom, support and help other people, and be balanced in your approach and let small things go. That's what I call maturity. All right. So going back again to what we were talking about before, most of the time, the team focuses on the content, on the perceived problem and the perceived solution. But what goes wrong are non-content elements to do with how the team behaves and how the team goes about fulfilling the task. Because each one of those individuals has more than one role to play. They're there based on their function, but they're also there as part of the team to fulfill a function needed in the team. We'll talk about what that might be in a minute. And everybody wants different things. They all want, as part of the role, to win and achieve the task. They all want to build and, you know, emotionally feel supported. They also want a personal win. They want to know, as a member, as part of the member of this team, I will improve my salary, my bonus, my career, my life, my position in the company, or I'll have a better time than I would have if I wasn't in this team. Okay. So let's talk about anything so far. Any questions? Okay. I want to talk about one particular research, one particular experiment that happened in the 70s and 80s in Henley Business School. There was a professor at Henley Business School called Meredith Belbin. Meredith Belbin's research started with a discussion about intelligence, IQ. And his thesis and presupposition was the more clever the people in the team, the more successful the team. So he did a series of experiments where he assessed people's overall intelligence quota, and he put together the most intelligent people into a team, and then he ran these business simulations, business games, where the top team, which was called the Apollo team, competed with other normal teams. What do you think happened? Have a guess. What do you think happened? Anyone? Come on, make a guess. You guys there? I'm beginning to think you're not there. Are you there? Can you hear me? Hello? Let me know you can hear me. Otherwise, I'll need to maybe restart the meeting. Oh, you can hear me. Okay, good. Thank you. I was beginning to wonder. Guys, somebody answer my question, please. What do you think?
Που υπηρετούν στην ελληνική αστυνομία. Είναι περιττή η εξήγηση του χαρακτήρα της επίσκεψης. Μια τέτοια κίνηση από τον αρμόδιο υπουργό μόνο πολιτικό συμβολισμό μπορεί να έχει. Βαρύτατο κιόλας. Η κυβέρνηση δηλώνει την παρουσία της στο πλευρό των αστυνομικών, πριν η δικαιοσύνη αποφασίσει για τα περαιτέρω. Είναι σίγουρα πολύ θετικό για την προστασία των πολιτών να ξέρει ο επόμενος αστυνομικός που θα σηκώσει όπλο απέναντι σε άοπλο, χωρίς ο ίδιος να απειληθεί, ότι η κυβέρνηση θα είναι δίπλα. Συμβολικά, να του κρατάει το χεράκι, να του λέει τίποτα κακό δεν πρόκειται να του συμβεί, να μην φοβάται. Γούτσου, γούτσου.
Right, it was Elena. She was on mute. Okay, so look, let me tell you what it is. They all failed. The Apollo team all failed. Every single time. Why? Why would the most clever people, the most intelligent people fail? How? That is what started his discussion about what's going on in this team. Remember what I started the meeting by saying that 80% of technology projects fail for non-technical reasons? Well, and I think that's true of almost all projects, irrespective of whether they're technology or otherwise. It was because of the different people playing different roles within the team, not to do with the functional roles, to do with their style and membership type, as he called it. So he decided he was going to call the really intelligent people who were coming up with lots of solutions, a lot of ideas, plants. And he found out that there were two kinds of intelligence. There is the positive intelligence that comes up with, okay, I have an idea. This is the idea, and this is what we could do. This is how we can do it. And then there is the equally intelligent person who says, actually, you know what? I can see a fault with that. It's a negative intelligence. I can see a mistake. I can see a problem. I can see a reason why it doesn't work. I can see a gap in our resources, and that's a monetary evaluator. Basically, between 1981 and 1993, he discovered 8 different roles. And he identified, for example, the leadership as being two types of leader: chairperson or coordinator, or shaper. The shaper is the project leader. Come on, let's do it fast, do it now, da da da. And very directive, very autocratic, etc. Let's do it. Coordinator is the one who facilitates the team, is a more longer term, more participative leader. Plant and monetary evaluator were the intelligent people. And then there were other roles. There was the team worker, who made sure everybody was happy and everyone was committed. There was the completer finisher that checked the quality of the work, dealt with the details of what needed to happen. And he came up with these 8 different roles. Now, this is available online and it's free. You can go online and do a questionnaire, very short questionnaire, and it'll tell you what your team type is. I didn't want to do this for you as a pre-course because I want to use a better tool, in my opinion. And later on, after we have the presentation from Stephen, I want to present that tool to you. But this tool is also available. And this tool is the beginning of this philosophy of, in order for a team to be successful, it needs a variety of different types of team player, different styles, if you will, to coordinate together. And that is the essence of a successful team, for it to be balanced, for it to be well managed, because different people are able to fulfill functions that are not to do with the technical know-how and technical skill. And when he put these teams together, these teams consistently beat other teams who were less balanced. Now, in accordance with this model, you have a preference. And most of the time, your number one preference is the first thing you go to when you're in a team. But like we said about leadership styles previously, we all have range. And we all have multiple different situations where a different approach might be more helpful in making us and the team successful. Now, what we always say, one of the presuppositions of neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, if you've ever come across it, is that the person with the most choice of how to behave is the one really in control. To use an English saying, if all you have is a hammer, every problem appears like a nail. Now, I don't know whether that translates well to you guys or not, but the idea is that if you only behave in one particular way and you don't have the option of choosing what will work best, then only success will be there when the situation matches what you can do. And that means, what are the rest of the team doing? Who are they? If there's another shaper, do you need to act like that? Do you have a secondary role that you could play so that you don't clash with that shaper? Because, I mean, shaper and coordinator, you should only have one, leading the team. That's the idea. The rest of them, you can have more. But, honestly, the person who recognizes their own preference, self-awareness, we said that on day 1 of this module, starts appreciating the context and the style and role of other people want to play, and then has the range and capability to switch deliberately to a different role, to a different style that is more appropriate for the needs of that team at that time, will be a better team player, will be a more successful person. All right. So the fundamentals of a lot of what we're talking about here comes back down to what we said in session 1. Be aware of yourself. Be aware of your natural tendencies as a leader and also within a team. Be aware of other people's preferences and the needs of the context of that team at that time. And then be more deliberate about choosing how you want to participate. Now, I've left here some slides that, you can find these all over the place, but these are ideas about where the value add comes in for different roles, for different types within a team, within the Belbin model. But like I said, Belbin is just a very simple model. It's a very old model. And when we come down to talk about the model that hopefully you guys have done, if you haven't, it's okay, but it was part of the pre-course, then we can talk more detail about that model. I don't want to give you more than one tool, but I want to give you a tool and I want to make you aware of it. The reason we're showing Belbin is because this idea of a balanced team with balanced types is really important. And it's going to be equally valid when we talk about the 16 personality types later on during this session. So how they can add value, where they go, is on these slides that I've put here for you as notes going forward. If there's any issues or anything you want to talk about, come back to me. But the whole idea is a model for thinking about your type and the types of others. Okay, so now, remember what I said at the beginning about what happens technically with teams when they're performing, and I think it's this one. You come up with an objective, you then just go through content, and it's all content based. There is, of course, the other side of that coin, which is how teams emotionally build that trust, emotionally build the commitment, and become a true team, not just in name, but in the culture, in the way that they behave. And that was developed by a gentleman called Bruce Tucker I think in a journal, 1965. And his model was that teams go through these stages in their development, and that every team goes through these stages. Now, they go through different times, depends how quickly they go through, depends how much of each one they do, but this is the normal step-by-step way that team effectiveness is built up. So you can see that a team is formed for whatever reason, most of the time, like we said, because they've got technical skills or that function needs to be represented in some way. And then you start finding out, who am I working with? What's going on? How are we going to do this? What's everyone's commitment? What's everyone's way of doing things? What's the leader? What about others? And you go through a position of discovery, which potentially is uncertain and creates conflict, because different people might have different ways of doing things. And you go through this phase called storming. Now, storming could become really painful, really difficult if teams, are not in a situation where they're exposed to each other, where there's no pressure. The storming could take a long time because people don't want to bring conflict up, and you stay in a low productive team situation for a long time. But the idea is that you go through this situation when you resolve those differences, where you resolve those conflicts, where you become certain about how we're going to do this as a team. What's our culture? What are our processes? What's expected of me? What do I expect from you? And you come out of storming into norming, which this is how we do things in this team at this moment in time for this project. And everybody understands that, and hopefully they align with it, and the aligning with the understanding, it helps them develop that team's effectiveness so that the team starts performing. You start to trust each other, you start to know what's going on, you start to understand how things happen, and therefore the team becomes successful. Okay, everybody okay with that? Here are the normal things that happen at these various different stages. It's really important for you as team members to be aware of what's going on so that you can embrace it, so that you could help the team move through that stage effectively, dealing with issues and moving on. The shorter the time that you go through from forming to performing, the more effective the team will be. The more things are hidden and you linger in a particular place, the less effective the team will be. So awareness of what's happening in here and your ability as a team member, and most importantly, as a leader, to facilitate the team moving through those stages is absolutely key. Okay, so lots and lots of different things here. And in each stage, remember what we said: communication, openness, mutual respect. You know, we had it in the previous slide. Support for those people that are finding it difficult. These are the key ways that will help you move through these steps and create an effective team, not just in name, but in actual sense of ownership and identity. Okay, so we've been going for nearly an hour now. Do you guys need a break? After that, we can go to Stephen and he can speak to us, or would you like to go straight through to Stephen and then have a break afterwards? What would you like? Because I noted that Stephen has now joined us. Let me know your preferences, please.
Maybe just have a 10 minutes break.
Is that okay? Okay,
Yeah.
let's have a 10-minute break. So 10 minutes past the hour, please come back.
Okay, thank you.
If it's okay with you guys, I'll just go and make a coffee as well, because I've been talking and I think, Stephen, thank you so much. So in 10 minutes, you know, we can start with your session. Okay, see you guys in 10 minutes. Actually 12 minutes, I think, by my watch. Oops, hang on, let me see what the message. food. Hello, Stephen. How you doing?
Hi, I'm good. I'm here. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you very much. Very good.
Good.
Thanks very much for giving us more time. Yesterday was brilliant. Thank you so much for your contribution. And today we're all in the same boat. Today we're all on Zoom.
Real.
So, at least, you no longer can feel that, you're not participating in person. I don't know at which point you left, but we had a really...
Good. So I'm ready when you guys are.
Okay. I think we are good to go, actually. So without further ado, over to you.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Stephen Welch. I'm a member of the Royal Society of the Arts. And I'm also a management consultant who's worked with a lot of global businesses, both in a consulting firm and recently independently. My job lately has been to create business simulations to help people think about their own behavior in an immersive environment so they can apply the knowledge they learn to the real world situation. I know a lot and talked a lot about different leadership models and approaches. And what I want to do today is share some of my experiences of working in global and virtual teams. So I think we have about half an hour. If you can hear me, that's great. And please put your questions on the chat in Zoom and we can answer them. So I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes and then we can have a discussion and conversation. Does that work for everybody?
Sounds good to me.
Great. Okay. So I know you've just been talking about the stages of team development. What I'd like to talk about and share is of existing teams and established teams in a virtual and a global environment. And, in my experience, there are a few things which really kind of make it happen for successful teams. And historically, a lot of global teams operated in a kind of what we might say quasi-virtual environment. They met from time to time, maybe every month or every couple of months. And the rest of the time they operated virtually, either through phone calls or Zoom or whatever. Nowadays, of course, more teams are virtual. So there's some really strong lessons we can learn from those teams about how they are successful or how they're not successful and apply them to our own knowledge and our own approach to working in global teams. I think the first element is what you might call composition of the team. And it has a really basic question, which is, do we all agree who is in the team? And, I've worked in a lot of leadership teams, and it's really great. The leader says, yes, you are a team, but yes, let's invite Mr. X or Miss Y or the secretary or the admin assistant to join the team. And I think that's really nice and inclusive and cooperative and makes for great communication. But it's really important that we're super clear who is in the team and who is not in the team. I did some work with the HMRC, which is a government tax body here in the UK. And one of the first questions I said was, who's in your team? It was incredible. Some said there were 8 people in the team. Some said there were 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. They could not agree who was in the team. And so I think composition is really important. And especially when it comes to virtual teams and global teams, because people can join at different levels, in different ways, in different relationships, Zoom, in person, whatever. Therefore, I think, when you're thinking about a global and a virtual team, let's be really clear. Who's in the team and who's supporting the team and helping the team be successful, but not actually part of the team. The second point I would say is around contribution. Do we all know what each other's contribution and role is in the team? Do I know my role? Do I know other people's roles? Do they know my role? Do we have the right skills in the team? For several years, I worked at the leadership team of a global technology company building and developing semiconductors. It was super clear in that team. There was the chief executive, there's production, there were sales managers. Everybody knew each other's role. And the best bit was everyone supported everybody else's expertise. No one doubted each other, because actually the really incredible thing was we all had different skills and expertise. And when I said something, people said, I don't know if Stephen's telling the truth, but he's obviously an expert, so I'll trust him. When the guy in charge of developing, mobile phone microchips said something, I had not a clue what he was talking about, but I trusted his expertise. And so therefore, I think, the key thing about contribution in a team and a global team is about really being clear around, we know what each other adds value and we trust each other to do that. And I think that's really important when working in not only global teams, but also virtual teams. The third thing is around commitment. And I think, when you're talking about global teams or virtual teams, or frankly speaking, any team, do we have a shared purpose that only we can achieve together? Are we really clear on what type of team we are? Are we a decision-making team? Are we a team that consults? Are we an information sharing team? And I've worked in lots of teams where it's been really confusing about why we're a team. And when you're thinking about global teams, and particularly virtual teams, I think that's really important. Why do we exist as a team? What is a clear thing that we can produce together? And, in my previous job, I was part of a consulting team working on communication and technology business. And, we had a global team around the world, and our job was to share information and compare experiences. We were about strategy, we were about sharing information. And the thing that made that work was we were really clear about that. We all knew that was the purpose of the team. It wasn't the best team in the world because we weren't a decision-making team. We were an information team, but everyone knew why we existed as a team. And everyone knew when they participated in the team, that was what it was all about. And so I think that's really clear. So whatever your team is, be clear why it exists. And so when you say about commitment and purpose of the team, it's particularly important in a virtual team because you don't have that chance to kind of share experiences and ideas. The next thing I would say is about what I might call configuration, which is, when you're working in a global or a virtual team, you need to be super clear around your virtual structure, your team norms, and your way of work culture. And, right now, for example, I'm working with a mining company in Canada. The top team of this company is very strange. It's about 40% local Quebec miners who, are very super Quebecois, French, Canadian business people. Another part of the team is full of mining experts from international and global teams. And so you have this kind of clash of values and experiences and speaking language as well. And so the challenge around there is to create ways of working that work for everybody. And when you're working in a kind of intact team and you all sit in the same room and meet regularly, you can pick up on those clues and experiences. The challenge with global teams is you have to kind of be more explicit and be clear around what those are and have that conversation. And, I would suggest to you when you're working in global teams, it's really worth sitting down and having that conversation around, what are our team norms? How do we want to work? What are the roles and responsibilities? What are our operational values? I did some work earlier with a pharmaceutical company, and they're a brilliant business, and everyone gets along really well. But when lockdown happened, suddenly everyone migrated to Microsoft Teams. And everybody knew how to operate in a kind of in-person environment. And, when you're in a meeting room, how do you behave? But they didn't understand and they didn't operationalize how to work as a team on Microsoft Teams. So we had to be quite explicit and sort of put some rules down around how do we work in Microsoft Teams. And I think that's really important around how do you create the culture and ways of working in an effective team? And, my one suggestion for that, whether you're a physical team, a global team, or a virtual team, any other kind of team, is be explicit about that. Because rules that work for me might not be rules that work for you, And, Masood, you and I have worked together for a while, and we have different ways of working. And what makes 100% sense to me and is obvious to me might not be obvious to you.
Absolutely
and
right.
You might say, oh, I'm going to do this. And I'm thinking, why? And I think, the kind of ground rule, the kind of fundamental rule behind that is always expect the best of other people. And, what they do and how they behave might not be aligned to your perspective, but your perspective is not always the right answer. And so think about the other person. So the fifth thing I want to talk about is coaching. And I think when you look at really successful global and virtual teams, they invest a lot of time in each other. They support each other's success. They take time to explore how they're working as a team. And the big challenge is that, when you get together on a kind of Zoom call like this or whatever other format, there's a very clear temptation to focus on operational matters. And that is fine up to a point, but really great teams focus also on how they operate as a team, and how they support and coach each other. I've been lucky to be a coach to a lot of leadership teams, and, a few years ago, I did a lot of work, for example, with Gazprom around how they become successful leaders and how they communicate and how they tell stories and how they do presentations. I did a lot of work with Philips in terms of their top leadership team around communicating messages and being strong leaders. So my impression is a bit biased because by definition, or support will, ask for my help. Teams that don't care about that sort of thing probably don't tend to get in touch. I think the clear thing about, that is you need to invest in yourselves as a team. And, if you're thinking about leading teams, and I say this whether it's a global team, a virtual team, or even a local team, invest in each other, have some fun, and enjoy each other's company and build those connections. And I think, when it comes to global teams and virtual teams, it's more tricky, but there are a couple of tips that I can suggest. One is around time zones. When you're organizing global calls for your team, share the pain. Don't always organize them in the time zone that suits you or the leader. By all means, the leader can direct the majority of the times. And if, most of the team are in one time zone, fair enough. But spread them around a little bit, and at least once in a while, have a time that suits your colleague in Australia or Latin America or Chile, wherever it is. Do it once a year or whatever the frequency is, because that sends a clear message that, we're a team, we're in it together. So I think that's in my view, that's a simple tactic. And, I know when I was leading global teams, it was a real nightmare for me. I had to do ridiculous calls at 3 a.m. sometimes, but I knew that that was the price of leadership, and that's what I had to do to share the pain and show people that we were a team. The second thing I would say about virtual teams is try to create situations to have some fun. It's easy when you're working in operational and global leadership teams to focus on data and facts and management information and progress and profit and loss. Many of us, I'm sure, have been on, global leadership events where we spend a couple of days together with our colleagues and we've focused on data and facts and logic and information. And then there's been an evening of a dinner or some kind of company event. That's hard to replicate virtually, but I think it's important to take the time. And part of, something I did, for example, last year was working with a client in Canada where we created a kind of fun team building event globally where we all played again an immersive experience and we learned a little bit. But the key thing was having fun as a team. And we built kind of virtual teams around the country who all competed with each other remotely. And that really helped them cement as a team. Yes, there was a bit of learning for sure, 100%. But actually the main goal was to help them connect and grow as a team, which is really hard to do virtually and globally. And so I think when you're working as a global team, focus on the operations and the performance of your business, absolutely 100%. But also take time to enjoy each other's company. And the last thing I would suggest is around context. As a leadership team, whether you're working in person, whether you're working globally or virtually, get the context right and make sure that the rest of the organization is ready to support you. And it's really frustrating. And I know from my own experience working in a global team where we'd set up in our consulting firm, we had this idea of a kind of key clients team to support global clients, which is a great idea. But the problem was the rest of the organization was not ready to do this, and all the law systems and all the exchange systems and all the billing systems were set up to deliver locally. And so our challenge as a team was not, well, yes, it was to deliver great client service for sure. But the second challenge was to help the organization, to really support the organization to do this, because all the operational systems were locally oriented, delivery focused, tactical elements. And so, if you apply those lessons to a larger team, when you're operating in a global team, make sure that the organization. So I think, when it comes to thinking about global and virtual teams, the same lessons that, Masu's been talking about apply, but in some ways they're more acute and more tricky. When it comes to composition of the team, you really need to be clear around who's in the team, who's participating in the Zoom calls, but who's an observer rather than a real participator. When it comes to contribution, you really need to be clear about why people are in the team and what they're doing. And virtually that's trickier because, it tends to be a bit more virtual. When it comes to commitment, you need to be super clear around why we're part of a team. Are you just listening in? Are you really focusing on the team's objectives rather than your individual ones? And that's harder to do remotely, so you need to spend a bit more time on that. When you're looking at configuration, solid structure and team ways and norms of working, I've worked in a lot of global teams. You can pick up the clues in person, and so understand where, your perspective is different from someone else's. Virtually, you need to spend time and explore those issues. When it comes to coaching, you need to spend some time and have some fun and enjoy each other's company, which is, you need to do it purposefully in a global or virtual team, which is harder. And then when it comes to context, each of you as team leaders need to make sure that the organization is set up for you for success. So yeah, those are, my points. I hope I've shared a few stories around that and what makes a difference. I'm happy to take any questions either in person or put them in the chat if you please.
Thank you, Stephen. Questions, team?
No. Okay, well, look, some people like to ask questions straight away. Some people like to reflect and consider things. So what I can do is I can put my details in the chat. And if you have any questions or on reflection, if you want to ask anything later, then please get in touch.
Can I ask you a question? Maybe start us off then. How do you advise dealing with political players in a team who say the right thing in team meetings, but actually when they're not in that team meeting, they go off and, either brief against their team or do their own thing. But they get away with the minimum adherence to what the team's norms were, acknowledged.
Yeah, that's a really tricky one, actually. I think it depends on the outcome. And, if you're working with a senior leader there's kind of two levels of behavior. One is the behavior in the team. Second is the behavior outside of the team.
Yes.
And, if you can speak the language in the team, but then say something different outside the team, that's not very good leadership behavior. And I can think of, it's hard to give general advice because I can think of any time when I can say one thing and it works and say the same thing in a different context and it totally backfires.
It's true. You need to understand the context. When I joined Ojan, before we merged with Coca-Cola, I have a boss who's a very good friend of mine now, Kadir Gunduz, who was managing Amitel, the giant Coca-Cola company in Indonesia, until a couple of months ago. And Kadir had a technique which I have borrowed and used, which was, if any team member comes to see me personally, and whether directly or indirectly is creating a political agenda that is maybe not the same, complaining about one of the other team members, etc., he would stop the conversation and get the other person to come into the team and then force the person to just say what they said, and they would deal with it. And I did exactly the same thing with my team. When we had 50% of our team that were newly recruited people from Europe, Dutch, Scottish, British, etc. And we had some people who'd been with the company a while, who were Palestinian, Jordanian, Egyptian, etc. And I wanted to destroy this as on them old and new. And the moment somebody would say, look, honestly, I understand, and usually with all the normal honeyed words, I know the positive intention, I know but as soon as they said but, I'd say stop. And I'd call that team member in and I'd say, okay, tell them now. And by the way, this is how we do things, not just with me, with anybody. You got something to say, you say to their face, and we deal with it. And I tell you, it was a fantastic learning, fantastic technique. And I did that. I still do that all the time to make sure you go through that norming and storming, performing faster by not having things hidden, no hidden agendas. Anyway, so just I
think the norming, storming, forming, that's really important. I would say there's a couple of things around that. One is, in the UK we have this theoretical concept called cabinet responsibility.
Collective responsibility,
whatever you might call it. Which the theory is, we argue, we have fierce debate in our team, and we have a great argument, and we seriously debate in the team. Once we do a decision, we collectively support it together. So if we're a team, we might all in this call come to an agreement around a course of action. Personally, I might disagree, but because we come to a view as a team, my job as a leader is to support that and to argue that in public. And, I was working with a company, part of Prudential Insurance in the UK. And it was really interesting because I'd worked a lot with the leadership team. I knew they were generally in agreement around strategy. And that was really clear. We'd rehearsed a few lines. Then we had an all company meeting. And I knew deep down they all agreed on the strategy because I'd been with them for a few days working it out. We had the all company meeting. The chief executive stood up and said, here's our strategy, A, B, and C. And then he said to the finance director, what do you think? And the finance director said, yes, that's really great. And items D, E, and F. And those items were right items and correct for the business, and we kind of discussed them in the meeting, but it gave the appearance of misalignment around the top team. So I think that's really important around collective responsibility. If you're in a top team, you might agree or disagree with the decision, but it's your job as a leader to support the rest of the team.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing that I think is important is around, personal feedback. and creating our teams override your own objectives. And the moment, when you're a leader of a team, you're not the CEO of your own business, you're a leader of the wider business. And really effective teams say to themselves, this, as an individual, this might hurt my business, my part of the business, but it's better for the overall business. And that's really emotionally mature, positive decision to make as a leader. And I think that's really important when you do that.
Yeah. We did two things in Ocean Coca-Cola, which was totally new to me and different to how things worked in Vodafone, as you know. One was all our bonuses were team bonuses.
Yeah.
And when the supply chain director says, I can't get the products out of Saudi Arabia into Iraq, we just can't fill enough 40-foot containers.
Mm-hmm.
I went down there as the HR and said, what's going on with the forklift truck drivers? Why can't we have double forklifts? Why can't these guys work longer hours? What do they need and whatever? And the reason that I did that was because all our bonuses were together, all our objectives were aligned, and therefore it was impossible for the supply chain director to fail and for me to succeed. One.
Yeah.
The second thing was we absolutely found the people who were naturally self-orientated, natural individual power orientated, and we just fired them and didn't recruit them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very difficult to find because honestly, those individuals can't help themselves. And and I know, Stephen, the big corporations are absolutely filled to brim with individuals that are power breakers and individually orientated.
Yeah.
As opposed to, what the Hay Group's model for values and for drivers would call, achievement and team orientation, as opposed to personal power and individual, social power as opposed to individual power. To use those.
And this points to the question that Zirong Chen has asked about building global relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's an element around that, which is personal connection and, team building and personal relationships, which I've talked about in terms of, if you're in person, that's easy. If you're remotely or globally, you have to take special steps to organize events and fun like that. But also to your point, Masood, actually having collective objectives is really important. What are the things that we can only achieve as a team together, and how do we create interdependence within the team? If I can achieve my objectives and not worry about Masood, then we're not really in a team.
Yeah, exactly.
But both achieve both objectives, then that becomes a mutual thing, and it builds good relationships and helps the team objectives. Yeah,
but I think Zerong's point is absolutely right. It's much harder doing it on Zoom and at a distance
100%.
because frankly, the level of trust that you can build within the team, where the person as a full human being, as opposed to a label, a function, or whatever else, is much more difficult to deal with.
Yeah, and in person, those things kind of happen. I don't want to say accidentally, but let's be clear. You have a team meeting there. Let's go for dinner afterwards, or let's have a coffee, or whatever it happens to be in your culture. Then that kind of happens. Yeah. But no one ever in Zoom said, "Oh, guys, we've had a 3-hour Zoom meeting. Let's stick on for half an hour and have a coffee." It just doesn't happen. So you need to take special efforts to build those team elements. And, like I gave my example of the work I've done with a Canadian company where they organized a special event just to build the team. You know what?
I'm gonna take what you said to heart.
You need to be deliberate about it when it comes to global and virtual. I'm gonna take what you said to
heart, and I'm gonna ask the team to prepare something about themselves, to introduce themselves at the beginning of next week's session, because I like to learn, and this was great learning for me. So we're a team here on Zoom, and us guys who are in here, I'll tell you a little bit about myself, my hobbies, what I do. You can have a look around my house and everything if you're interested. And just 2 minutes from you guys so that we build that relationship, because here's the learning. We're on Zoom, we're a virtual team. And I was thinking that this might be a good idea for you to get to know me. I get to know you, and we do that. So brilliant ideas.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Are you guys okay to do that? Just 2 minutes at the beginning of next session.
Or put your cameras on maybe and share your local environment.
Well, I want to make sure everyone's comfortable with what they want to do.
Of course.
Because that's not necessary for our team to make anyone uncomfortable or to force them to do something that they're not comfortable doing. But if we can just have a quick round table so people can introduce themselves, what job they do, where they live, you know, something like that, then it'll help us as a virtual team connect with each other more. So that's my learning from today's session, and we can implement it next week. Okay with everyone? If I don't hear anyone complaining, then I'll assume that it's okay. That's probably not a good thing to do, but I can't help it. Okay, Stephen, thank you so much for your time. I don't want to impose on you anymore. You've already given us much longer time than we envisaged. Thank you so much, and that was really helpful. And I've taken learning, as you can see, and will implement that learning myself going forward. To make the virtual meetings more successful. So
yeah, well, no problems. And you know, if you want to connect or drop me an email with some questions, then I'll put my notes in the chat. So good luck with the rest of your course. Okay.
Sorry. Having a moment. Give me a moment. What happened? Oh my gosh. All right.
Okay. Fine. Well, as I said before, if you have any questions,
I don't know what happened.
Please make a note in the chat or send me an email or drop me a note on LinkedIn, and I'll happily answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Really appreciate it. Okay. Thank you.
See you later. Okay. See you later. Bye-bye.
Okay, guys, let's go back to our lecture. I hope you found that helpful. Oh my gosh. Sorry, I'm having a moment. Bear with me for a second. Let me see what's happening. Because I think it's gone frozen again. Here we are, back again. Wonderful. Okay, I hope you found that useful. As you can see, I did. So hopefully that will help us move forward. Let me share my screen again, and we carry on with the rest of the lecture. Okay, let me see if we can share. Where is it? Can you see the screen?
No.
No, hang on. The slides didn't come up. Let me close the slide and... Oh, can you see it now? Can you guys see the slides?
Yeah.
Just one person. Just say yes or no, please.
Yes, yes, yes.
You can see the slides. Wonderful. Excellent. Excellent. So I hope you found that helpful. Thank you so much, guys, for letting me know you can see it. That's very helpful. I appreciate that. So let's talk about real life now. What happens? The reality of this. Oh, by the way, one other thing. I've put one other model for the team development steps, just so that you've got more theoretical background in case you need it. I like the Tucker model. It's simpler. But this is the other model, which was Dexler and Civet's team steps, which is just there for you. But let's talk about why teams don't work, why they fail. You'll see at the bottom The basis of it is lack of trust. Remember what I said at the beginning. If we don't trust each other as a team, if we don't support each other, if we are in a team in name, there it is. If you're fearing the conflict and therefore you don't go through the storming, you don't come out the other end in norming and performing. So fear of conflict stops it. When you see something not working, you mustn't let it lie. You must confront it and fix it. Lack of commitment. We'll talk about that in a minute. If you see someone who's not committed and you've made an effort to help them become committed, get rid of them. Find somebody else. Be very clear about accountability and focus on what success looks like for the team. This is team dysfunctions from Linciani. Again, these are references you can go through. There are certain people called social loafers. They're people in the team, but they're just going around for the ride. They're not participating. They're not taking risks. They're just saying the minimum that they can get away with. They put the minimum amount of effort in. And I want to just talk very quickly through why these things develop, what are the consequences, and what you can do to deal with that, because we all have to deal with it. Can I tell you something? I wanted to make team participation a peer score so that you guys can give scores to each other, especially for the group exercise, so that something like 15% of the overall 100% was you guys scoring each other and your participation for the group exercise, for the assessment. We weren't able to do that this year, but next year maybe we'll introduce that. The reason I wanted to do it wasn't because I think we need to punish people who don't want to. No. It's creating the right context. Instead of people joining the team and then at that point you decide how to fix things. No. You create the right environment. When people join, they already know what the deal is. They already know there's a team objective. They already know that there's going to be team reward, not individual reward. They already know that their peers will have consequence for them. And therefore, the loafer situation doesn't happen. You avoid it rather than deal with it when it's happened. Remember what I said, choosing the right people is step number one. You recruit people at haste, you regret at your leisure. That's the classic saying about selecting people. So the reason is, it's a matter of, okay, how much equity, how much capital, how much personal part of my time, my effort, my association do I want to put into this? If it's not easy to identify the person's own contribution, why should I? I'll minimize my risk, I'll get the reward. Or this isn't important enough, I will put my efforts where I can get more reward, where I'm more significant. How you prevent it is, like I said, you set up the thing right. You set up the measures, the monitoring, and the reward correctly to begin with, and then the social loafing doesn't even occur, yet alone having to deal with it. Some of the signs of where people are not fully engaged, not always, is about how much they participate. Sometimes some people talk too much. How often? How much value did what they say add? How long did it talk for? This item of type of talking is quite important, because sometimes people feel, oh my God, I should say something, because otherwise people think, why am I here? Or I am an important person, therefore I have to say something. All the research shows that it's not the quantity, but the quality of what you say that determines your value within the team. In fact, what I was taught, and I was taught this, was the more senior you become, the less you should talk. You let other people talk because you don't want to compete with them for airtime. That makes you the same level as them. You're not competing with them. I don't have to compete with you for airtime. But when I say something, it was because it needed to be said. And what I said took the team in a different direction or helped them substantially. You're offering very big teams. And if you're in a team of more than 6 to 7, the amount of time allocated for everyone to be able to participate becomes very difficult. In a great team, everybody feels that they are participating irrespective of the amount of time they've spoken. And you could see that in their eyes. You could see if they're paying attention. You could see if they're nodding. You can see if they're committed physically to what you're trying to do. It's not just about talking. The engagement, as you'll see, is broader than that. And it's really engagement you want, rather than just talking. What you don't want is people going off and playing on their phones. You know that they're not listening to you. Look out for them tapping their fingers or tapping their feet. It means they're bored. They want you to get on with it. Look out for people doing emails while you're talking. They're not engaged. Okay? All of those things are really significant. So, did you guys do the pre-course requirements and have a go on the MBTI 16 personality type questionnaire that was sent on Minerva? It's okay if you haven't, just let me know. Did you do them? Who did it? Anybody want to share? My type is I'm ENFP. I'll explain what that means in a moment. Come on, guys. Tell me, somebody, did you do it? What was it? If you didn't do it, it's okay. Just tell me.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? Because internet problem, I can hear it clearly.
Okay, sorry. Did you do the questionnaire? The 16 personality types?
Yes, I've already done it at the beginning of this.
Ah, yeah. Thank you very much.
Semester.
Wonderful. What was your type? Zerong's INFJ. Fantastic type. Really good. Thank you. What was your type? There are no bad types. All the types are necessary. Remember what we said about Belbin? All the types add value. Okay, let's go through it then. So, a couple of things about MBTI. I've been doing MBTI since 1987 when I first came across it. And I'm qualified with the owners of this tool called the British Psychological Press into step 1 and step 2. And I often use it for team building. Not because it's a test, not because it's a questionnaire, but because I like the philosophy of it. If the philosophy of this tool is used, the world and the businesses and our teams will be better. Because the philosophy of this tool is try to understand other people and appreciate them for what they are and what they can bring, not for what you want them to be. Remember what I said about my friend Headley and what I said about Belbin? The world being all the same as me, Masoud Golshani, it'd be a very boring and not an effective world. For a team, for an organization to be effective, you need diversity, not just of backgrounds, age, whatever, but of style, of types of role they play within the teams, within problem solving, within the communication. So this is a self-assessment questionnaire. It is not about somebody testing you and observing you and telling you what you didn't know about yourself. This is a self-report. Nobody is going to tell you what you are. You decide for yourself what feels comfortable in your own shoes. Okay? This is about your preferences. It's not about strength and whatever, although those are often driven by what we prefer. If we like something, we get to be good at it normally. If we don't like something, we don't do it, and therefore we have become less able at it. Not 100%, but in general, this is true. So that's what MBTI does. It's about you having a model where you can learn about yourself, where you could also learn about other people's types and appreciate those types so you could build a complementary relationship. So I recognize someone is different to me. That difference might make it more difficult for me to feel comfortable with them. It might require me to have more effort to do things differently that are not normal to me. And yet that person will add synergy to me and make me more successful than I would be if I was with just people who are like me. So that whole philosophy of to understand is to forgive is a French saying. And try to appreciate what the differences are is a wonderful philosophy. It's a philosophy that will make the world and our businesses better. The history of it is Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, as MBTI stands for, came from the work of a Swiss psychologist called Carl Jung. Did any of you guys come across Carl Jung before? Man and his Symbolism, so many of the other books. So there is a lot of stuff coming out of the work that Carl Jung put to us. I mean, you guys would have heard of Freud, right? Most famous, I guess, person who, father of psychology, who's now no longer the seen as the guru, but people are now often thinking that he wasn't always right. But nevertheless, Freud was interested in what makes us all different. Our history, our childbirth experiences, how the parents reacted with us. And he was very interested in the individual as a unique being. What are also things that individuals didn't know even about themselves, their own subconscious, which is very interesting. Carl Jung, who came after him, was younger than him. Well, I think there were contemporaries, but he was younger than him. Was interested, but he said, okay, that's really interesting, but that's not useful. What I'm interested in is what are the lessons that we can learn about us as human beings that would make us able to connect and communicate with each other better. A long time ago, about I think almost 100 years ago, two ladies, Isabel Myers and Catherine Myers-Briggs, they were mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. They were bored housewives. They decided to study psychology, and they were very interested in Carl Jung. And as a result of that, they decided to develop these questions to find what are the types that Carl Jung talked about, and how you would use those types in order to really understand yourself a bit more and to understand other people. So that is what they did. They came up with 16 model roles, but actually they started with fewer than that. There are no good or bad. All the types are necessary, and all of us, we do all of these things. It's a question of which one do you prefer. So there's been so much research, I mean, well over 20 years of research, and all over the world. And I'll share that with you. There's all kinds of studies that are, actually, you've got the slide, so you should be able to see it, from different countries, different professions. If you are interested in this, there is a library of material on the internet about MBTI. What kind of teacher, what kind of parent, what kind of child, what kind of lover, what kind of professional, whatever. It's all there. And it continues. So really, really rounded. It's not just about business. It's a very rounded tool, which is why I like using it. Also because there's no bad. Everything's good. And we all need to be aware of it. So I've talked about this. This is about preferences, not absolutes. When you get a very high score when you do this, it doesn't mean you are a very big extrovert. It means you're very sure that you are an extrovert. It's about how sure are you what your preference is, not how big that preference is. So I get this a lot. Oh, I'm in the middle between one of these numbers, between the E and the I. That means I'm not, no, it means you're not sure yet. It means you haven't discovered yet what your preference is. It doesn't mean that the fact that I'm at the maximum on extrovert, for example, doesn't mean I'm a maximum extrovert. It means I'm 100% sure I'm an extrovert. It also doesn't mean that I'm very good at it. It just means that's what I prefer. And you can decide. Even if you've done the question and the test, it says here, but it's a questionnaire, and you decide during my description that you don't feel comfortable, you prefer being something else, you can choose to be what you want to be. So I've already covered all this. You can do it, you can test it, it's all free, etc. There are 4 dimensions that Jung came up with. The first one he came up with was extrovert versus introvert. Now, you guys all speak English, you understand that in normal English, when you call someone an extrovert or when you call someone an introvert, you're talking about sociability. But as most of these words are not exactly the same as the English definition for them. And therefore, I've provided more definitions so that we could be very exact about what they mean. The other dimensions, if I can explain it, extrovert versus introvert is your focus of life. If you get your energy from outside and you give your energy outside and you live mostly outside of yourself, you're an extrovert. In other words, I get infused by what's going on around me, and then I will show that enthusiasm back to that world. I'm an extrovert. I get energy from outside, I give it outside. An introvert finds meaning within themselves. They really, really look for meaning inside, and they keep that energy and meaning inside. Doesn't mean they're not sociable. That's where your source of energy is. You've gone into the world or you've looked inside. What kind of information have you looked for? If you've looked for factual information, details, things to do with the now and the past that you could test, you're using your senses to monitor and measure reality. As opposed to intuitive, where you're saying, okay, I'm interested in that data, but actually I'm only interested in that data insofar as it tells me what's going to happen next. What are the possibilities? Where are we going? What's the imagined future that we can actually suppose for ourselves? That's the kind of information I'm interested in. So you've got that information. What do you do with it? If you're a logical, structured person, then you're thinking and you're saying A plus B equals C. Doesn't matter how I feel about it. A plus B equals C. As opposed to, no, this doesn't fit in with my belief system, with my view of the world, with what's right. This is the only model where there's a difference between men and women, where the rest of them, men and women, are almost all 50-50, exactly the same, and there's no difference between them. But in the thinking and feeling, there's a difference where more women are on the feeling side. And as we said, throughout leadership, it's very much around, especially for global leadership and leadership in general, feeling is an important part of it, not just logic, but you need both. And then, okay, so you've gone into the world or inside, looked for your view of the world, you use the information that was there, the type of information, and you've put it into either a thinking or a feeling. What do you do with it? How do you create a view of the world where you can make decisions, where things can happen? If you're a judging type, you have a very clear structure in your mind of how the world works. And when a new piece of information, new fact, or new logic has come to you, you cut it into the shape that fits into your model of the world and you fit it in. Therefore, it's very easy to access decisions, very easy to make things happen because you know where everything is, you know how everything fits. But you have cut it to shape to fit in with your model of the world. A perceiving person, no, they keep the original thing the way it was, and therefore they have a more complex view. It's much more difficult to make decisions. They rather not make the decision, in fact. The judging, therefore, is able to see the black and white and make decisions quickly. The perceiving is interested in the gray. Let me take my time and really see the intricacies and differences. We'll talk about this. So they're not, all these categories are not the same. They're not equal. Each one is a dimension that's doing something particular. And you can't say, oh, you're judgmental, therefore you're a judgmental person. It's not how it works. Right, let's go through it then. So once you put those dimensions together, 4 dimensions, 2 different categories you could be, you get 16 types. And that's the MBTI model, where you fit. So let's talk about what I mean by preference. Can you take a pen with a piece of paper and just very quickly sign your name? I don't need to see it. I'm not going to check. Just do it. If you've signed your name, now take the pen to the other hand and sign your name again. That's preference. Doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means the first time you did it was easier. It means that the first time you did it, there was a flow. It was more comfortable and you got better results and quicker. It's exactly the same with behavior. You can do all those behaviors, but what's the behavior that's comfortable when you step into your own shoes? What's the one that comes naturally, that flows, where it requires less energy and less deliberate thought to do it? You really have to think through how to sign with the other one. The other one I'd like to normally do is cross your hands the way you normally cross your hands, right? Now do it the opposite way. I can't, see? It's very difficult. I have to think about that. That's preference. I don't want any misunderstanding about this tool. That's why it's important to get the preference. And as we go through life, and as you get to know yourself through experience, you become sure about what you really prefer. And you don't waste energy, because you waste energy when you are trying to be something that's not natural to you. So that's the self-assessment. You decide how sure you are about your preferences, your orientation of energy, type of information you collect, how you make your decisions, and how you perceive life for decision making. An extrovert, like I said, get that energy from outside and focus that energy outside. An introvert can be sociable, but they are not demotivated necessarily like an extrovert by what's happening around them, not as easily. They take time to reflect. They take time to get meaning for themselves rather than having the meaning come to them from outside. They're reflective. So just as an example, if you're sharing information with an extrovert, what do you want to do? You can give them a lot of information. You can make it really energetic, really colorful, and you infuse them. You try to sell to an introvert like that, they'll feel that you have imposed on them. They want you to send their pitch and your slides in advance so they could reflect on it. They don't want you to force them to make a decision there and then. They want to go away and think about it. They want the information to come to them in a very slow, methodical way. No good trying to force them over or talk over them or whatever. You also take your time. You leave pauses. So you see what I mean? You want to be successful. You want to make a pitch. You make a guess. This person is an introvert, in my opinion. I'm an extrovert. You then have a choice. Do I do what I've always done or no? I want to win. If you want to win, you communicate and you persuade that introvert differently. That's what I mean. And the same within a team. Here we are in a team. This person is not talking. That doesn't mean they're not engaged. I said that. You want to move the communication in the team. How do you communicate with an introvert versus communicating with an extrovert? Completely different. Completely different. You let them spend time privately coming to grips with it. That's how you make successful presentations. That's how you persuade them. That's how you get them on board in your team. So the characteristics is action, action, action for extrovert, whereas introvert likes to think through things and reflect. Remember the Kolb cycle when we talked about reflection, theorizing, planning, and then action again? Look at this. Look in your team at what point you need to reflect. This is the person who will help you do that. They're also an anchor because they don't get demotivated or overexcited. They keep calm and they concentrate. They have a depth of interest rather than the breadth. So if you want to know what you are, ask yourself this question. When no one is imposing on you, how do you like to make decisions about how you spend your weekend? Do you spend your weekend on your own reading a book or, going for a walk or whatever? Or no, you want to go to a party, dance, be around people, get infused by them. What are your hobbies? How does that work? These are very good indications. On the whole, 72% of the people in the world are extrovert and 28% are introverted from a source of energy point of view. Clearly, don't mistake this, I'll say it for a third time, with sociability. Introverts can be sociable. From a point of view of the cultures of the world, these are the opposite extremes. The most extroverted countries in the world: Nicaragua, Lebanon, Rwanda, Uzbekistan, etc. I remember in Lebanon, my God, everyone wants to talk to you. I went to see how we were displaying our products on a supermarket. So I was doing market visits. And this old lady grabbed me, absolutely touched me, grabbed me and said, "You're not from here. Where are you from? What are you doing here?" And she wouldn't let me go. She was talking to me. She was so friendly, so lovely. And I got that all the time in Lebanon. Surprising, huh? As opposed to running courses for Swedes or Finns, where nobody talked. It was dead quiet. And you think to yourself, as an extrovert, oh my God, things are going dreadfully bad. But they weren't. The end result was, for them, for their context, they were perfectly fine. They just weren't giving me what I expected and what I wanted. And when you're aware, then you can forgive them for that. You can mitigate, say, you know what, I'm presenting to these Finns, my expectation should be, now, of course, be careful of those levels of generalization, but on the whole, that would be true. Okay? So, next thing. Look at this picture. Tell me what you see. Anyone, tell me what you see. An S would say 4 people around the brown table, plant in the top left-hand corner. The person on the bottom left-hand side with the tie on, well, 2 of them have ties on, I can't see the third one, showing a square piece of paper, looks like an A4 size. There's a white triangle on it, and he's holding what looks like it could be a pen, but it's just a cylindrical object in his other hands. Factual. An N person would say there's a meeting taking place. This person is presenting their ideas. He's rolled up his sleeve. They've all rolled up their sleeves. They're busy. Everyone's paying attention because they're looking at this guy and they're all really full of energy. Lots of things are happening. And he's just showing them what they're going to do. See, there's a story being told. There's a pattern that you built, which is a presupposition, is a possibility. And that's how it's different. So a sensing person just uses their 5 senses to describe what's going on. They base that on reality, and they value practical things. They measure the here and now and the past. An intuitive person uses the same information to look for association, for look patterns, and to see the trend. Where might it go? And they imagine the future reality. So a sensing person might be interested in how all the detail. The intuitive person looks at the whole. The sensing person lives in the moment. The intuitive person likes to live in the future. Think about the future. They like to measure things. If you're S, you like to think about theories and abstract things and possibilities. If you're intuitive, so N. Practical theory. And how the type of information is also very different. You can see how the sensing looks at things in a much more detailed way, whereas the intuitive looks at the longer term, bigger picture. Okay? Facts, ideas, specific, big picture, realistic, imaginative, here and now, future, practical, theoretical, observed, conceptual. Is that okay?
Is it possible to mix these two things together?
No, because you'll have a preference for one. Of course, you would do both of these things in any normal situation. You'd be crazy to ignore facts, even if you're intuitive.
Yes.
But your preference, how much time you spend, how much energy you put in is more on the other side. So an intuitive person would still use facts, but they're only interested in the facts insofar as it tells them what's happening in the future.
So what do you think you will belong to? The sensing?
Oh, I'm a strong N. I'm a very strong E, and I say strong because I'm sure I am E, and I'm sure I'm N. So I'm a big picture person. I'm an ideas person. I like the philosophical type of things. You could see that. I constantly match everything to a philosophy about life, philosophy about leadership, and whatever. So I'm looking at it from a conceptual point of view. And I like to imagine what the future world would be like if we could create better leaders, better. You see what I mean? As opposed to, no, I'm going to go through my slides. I'm going to tell you, and then that's the fact. These are the facts. These are the research. And, you know, so I also use research, but I only use research insofar as it illustrates the model and the theory. I'm not interested in the details of the research itself. And S would be interested in the methodology too much. They'd be interested, I say too much because, again, I'm showing my own prejudice. But I need people who are S. Because often what happens then is because I'm interested in moving very quickly to, okay, what does this mean? Maybe I made a mistake in my assumptions. Maybe some of the facts were not completely correct. Maybe I didn't gather enough facts. So if I've got somebody in the team with me who's an S, that person stops me making those mistakes.
Yes. So there need to be like one person to change something that you insane idea, like to put you to the fact, put you in the reality.
You are 100% right. This person makes me safer and more successful because they're giving me something that I don't have, and I appreciate them. Now, they might upset me. I want to move on. I want to say, okay, let's just come up with ideas how we're going to solve this. And this person's coming and saying, look, I want to check the resources. I want to check these assumptions. I want to check actually what the problem really is. I want to check whether this solution is practical. I want to check the facts. And that person might frustrate me. That person might upset me. Same as the intuitive introvert versus extrovert. I want to make enthusiasm, and that person is sitting very quietly, staring at me and not responding.
So So another kind of ability you must to like have is like compatible ability. You need to like you're able to listen to other people's suggestion ideas. You can accept it. You can think, put these idea to my idea and combine them together to make a perfect idea. This is what the leader do. This is my opinion.
Yes, you're right, but more than that, you're accepting them as human beings who are different to you in how they see things.
Yeah.
So you and I can both be extrovert, introvert, intuitive, and work together and agree between us the ideas and build our ideas up. But the Added value is working with somebody who is uncomfortable for us, who is holding us back, who doesn't want to do what we want to do. You appreciating their view of the world and how they want to do things will add more value to you than if you got more people like yourself who just want to do things the way you want to do them. This is, you're absolutely right. This is the fundamental of what we're talking about. Find people that can add value to you who are different, and that difference makes you and the team stronger.
Yeah. Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely
So,
right.
here's an example for you. Think about this. If you're going somewhere, normally as an N, I have a general idea what direction it is, and then I start going there, driving or whatever, and often I get lost. And you know what? I don't mind getting lost because I find new places. And S wouldn't do that. And S would plan it, would look at the map, would not just look at the map, but would know each step and tick him off as he goes along.
Yes.
Same, if you buy furniture, I don't know whether you have IKEA in China, but I mean, you know, you can go buy flat furniture, you have to assemble yourself. And they normally come with instruction. And I buy a lot of stuff from China, they come with instruction. How many of you read the instruction first, really understand it, and then do things one step at a time? That's S. How many of you, like me, start playing with the stuff and then have a go, and then you find out you missed a step and you have to open it all up again and start again and try again, and you experiment till you get it right?
Yeah.
That's the difference, you see?
Yes.
Now, if I had an S working with me, I could envisage what that furniture should look like when it's done, and that's my N, and where I would put it, how I would use it, and the S would help me assemble it in the right steps.
Yes, absolutely.
So 76% of the world like to be sure, because that's the way people stay safe. People stay safe because they know what's going on. They don't like to make guesses and take risks. That's not how human beings are. We'll talk about that next week when we talk about, you know, change management. So intuitive people, 24% of the population. Now let's look at the countries and the cultures. The countries with the biggest intuitive are Tunisia, Italy, Algeria, Morocco, Chile, Argentina, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Brazil, Montenegro, and Uruguay. And you can see a lot of West African countries, then Afghanistan, are the most observant, most S. And of course, Singapore is in there. I think China is in there, although very marginally. And I think Hong Kong is more than actually even China. Basically, fact-based is a safe mode, knowing what you're going to get yourself into, as opposed to jumping in. Now, you got all this information, what do you do with it? How do you organize this so that you can have a conclusion? The most easier one is thinking person is logical. They make decisions objectively without feeling. I don't have to think about how I feel about A plus B equals C. It just does. And it could be the worst thing that happens to the world, but it is what it is. Therefore, you can see errors quickly, you can fix them quickly because it's logical. You see the sequence, you follow the pattern. A feeling person, no, they say, how do I feel about this? What are my morals? What are my beliefs, whether religious, whether political? Is this good for us? Is it good for the world? Often the people who are F then go and come up, because they're clever, they're not stupid people, they come up with the logic to justify the decision they made based on feelings. I don't like this person. Now I'm going to come up with a feeling, a reason why. But originally, I just got a bad chemical vibe about them. But the feeling person is also the person that shows emotion, that actually goes and invites people to participate, that shows appreciation, that finds the common ground, that looks at the person as a full human being rather than a resource. Deciding with your head, deciding with your heart. Deciding logically, deciding based on feelings and belief system, how your parents taught you to be. Concern for the truth, concern for relationships. Objectivity, subjectivity. And making very spontaneous, quick decisions because you can, that are very critical. Otherwise, no, you appreciate things that need to be done a particular way. I mean, you can see the rest of it. It's pretty straightforward. So a thinking person analyzes, organizes, they fire when they're ready, they stand against opposition, they hold to policy. The feeling person persuades, consolidates, teaches, sells, coaxes people forward. Okay? So guided by cause, guided by values, guided by logic, guided by other people's point of view, based on truth, based on harmony, based on impersonal criteria. No, everything is personal. Criticism is personal. Critiques praises. Focuses on task, focuses on the relationships. Now, this is the only one of the 4 continuums where I personally am not sure about myself. Because I have a personality that is 100% challenging and questioning, but I'm 100% empathetic and understanding of other people's. So you question everyone, everything, but you don't judge them, you understand them and you appreciate them. And that's a very unusual combination. So I haven't worked out what I am. And I'm going through my life with all the experiences, continuously learning more about myself till I know. And I like to believe, and in the beginning, when I first used to do this, when I was in 1987, when I told you, I used to think I was a T. I was a very strong T, ENTP. And as time has gone on, I've recognized that I was not telling myself the truth, and that actually I use my logic to justify my feelings, and that I'm more F. So I've chosen to call myself ENFP because I feel more comfortable in the F. Do you follow me? This is also something you guys can do. This is how the countries stack up. So you can see thinking countries. I'm amazed Iran is in there. I mean, I'm originally Iranian, and I always thought Iranians were incredibly emotional, passionate, whatever. And clearly, no, they pretend, but actually, according to this research anyway. Singapore, Brunei, lots of the islands, interestingly, of Malaysia are very strong with their feelings, very strong with their feelings. Any surprises there for you? What do you think China is? More T, more F?
More T.
Why do
No,
you say that?
Chinese people like more prefer, you know, the feeling of safety.
Okay.
They don't want to like you said, they don't want
the safety is the S. The safety is S, and they were S.
Like
it's whether they're logical or emotional.
Logical, more logical, I think.
All right.
Because before you're doing everything, you may go make a like not in the detailed plan, but like brief plan. You know, they know what I need to do, how many times I need to finish my jobs, or like what kind of things that need to be done in a schedule. Not doing things randomly or something like that.
Okay. No, very good.
Just my point of view.
I agree. Look, I've done some business with China, and I agree with you. I think on the whole, I have the same feeling. You're right. I have the same opinion. So then we talk about, okay, you've got this logic. How do you create your orientation in your life? If you're a judging type, you prefer to be in a very planned, organized way, where you know where everything is, you know how decisions are made. You get stressed when things are not decided. You get stressed when things are last minute. You want things to be planned and organized. Whereas when you're perceiving, you don't care. Everything will be okay in the end. Lots of effort in the last day. The difference between this is, if you're a judging type and you've got an assignment to do, you know you've got 1 month to do it. You plan every single week. You know what you have to do to get there, and you're ready when you've got to be ready. A perceiving person basically starts thinking about it, but doesn't do anything until maybe 2 or 3 days before it's due. and then they work all through the night to get it done. They like to keep their options open. They don't worry if things change last minute because they haven't done anything. They haven't done anything. They can always change their plans last minute. So a judging person has a very organized lifestyle. A perceiving person is flexible. So like, for example, you want to go on holiday, you are a judging person, you plan in advance, you research that location, you research what's available, what the prices are. A perceiving person says, okay, I want to go on holiday now, I feel like it, what's available last minute? Oh, somebody's told me something, right, that's where I'll go. So structured and organized, just go with the flow. Life is under control, I'll experience life as it happens. It'll be more interesting. I will make my decisions. No, I'll let things happen to me. I'll be surprised. I like the surprises, is what perceived say. You have very clear limits and categories for everything. No, you explore things as they come. Need for structure, need for flexibility, open space. Excuse me. So, a judging person is planful, organized, controlled, structured, scheduled. Perceiving person, on the whole, it likes things to emerge, flexible. I don't want to leave rules for myself and constraints. I'll go with the flow and I do things last minute. So ask yourself, how do you like to do your shopping? Do you do detailed lists, put it on the fridge door and you build it as you go? Or no, you just go, you basically need something and you go, and what you see on the shelf, you'll then remind it, oh, I want that, or I need it, you take it away. That's go on.
It depends, I think. Like sometimes I have like target products I want to buy, but sometimes just hang around in the supermarket and like get something that is some like little bit interesting or something, like interesting stuff, like I will buy something like that.
No,
I didn't
look,
actually make
can I tell you
plans.
something?
Yeah.
We all do all of that. Of course I make plans, but what is your preference? What is it that if there was no outside control, this is how I would do it? You remember what I said? This is not about what we do. We do all of these things, but we all have a preference. So it's about what you prefer, and then having appreciation for someone who prefers something different. Do you see what I mean? Because on the whole, that preference normally drives what they're good at.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't have a plan, if you're like me, a very high P, it doesn't mean you don't plan. Of course I plan. How can you do anything without planning? It doesn't mean you don't have a structure of what you do. Look at our lessons. I plan it, I have a structure for it. It just means it's not my preference.
Okay,
my preference is to tell stories and go off at a tangent and describe things to you, right? But I have learned that there will be people whose preference is planning.
Yes.
And they would be better at it than me.
Yeah.
And I need people around me who are better at planning, like Elena.
Yeah.
Who reminds me, have you done this yet? Where is this? You see what I mean? She keeps me safe. So that's what I mean.
Okay, I'm a P. Yeah.
You're a P. Wonderful.
P.
Like me. I'm a P.
Yeah. I'm a P.
Peas in a pod, as they say in English.
Yeah. I was be asked by mom to buy some stuff like that in the supermarket. I always be told by my mom, yeah, you need to buy the shampoo, you buy some like towels, you need to buy some food.
You know what I'm talking about. In the end, you have people around you and they are different to you and they add value. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
So these are the countries in terms of judging versus perceiving. I don't know how true these are, but this is what the research is showing us. And overall, this is how the types add up. And of course, not all the countries are the same. So in Britain, the #1 management type is ISTJ. In Vodafone, I used to use this tool for all executive and director training. So I managed to get all the directors to do this. And almost 90% were ENTJs. That just tells you what's the culture of the company. The culture of the company is ENTJ. Most retailers are ESTJs because these things can break down by profession as well. Some professions, so accountants are normally ISTJs as a massive generalization. Scientists are ITJs or INFPs, mostly INTs, so to speak. And again, these are massive generalizations. But when you want to use this, you can say, what is this person that I need to make a complementary relationship, whether to sell to them, whether to work better with them, or what is this company? What is this team in general? And then you choose your strategy. This is what I do naturally, but I now understand that this company are a bunch of ISTJs. I am the opposite. I am ENFPs. If I went in there with all this big picture stuff and talked a lot and put pictures of the future and showed them all the complexity, I would lose them. They would not buy. They would not sell, allow me to sell. So what do I do when I'm presenting to an ISTJ? I change my style. I control myself. I put more data in. I put in the logic, a very clear structure. I put in a very clear decision table and timetable and structure. And I sent it to them in advance. And when I'm presenting to them, I do it quietly and slowly. I take my time step by step. And I don't force them to make a decision there and then. I let them reflect and I come back. Do you see what I mean? Because in the end, you want to create a positive relationship and you want to win. So the person with the most choice of how to behave is the person in control. So all of us want to work in teams that are wow. The more varied the people in the team, the more important it is to go through that forming, storming, norming, and performing, because you will need to do it because you're different to each other and you will have a clash. But once you've gone through it, you'll be a better team because of it. There is so much on MBTI. I've just left this here because I wanted you guys to have something that relates to leadership. This is the different types of leader based on their type. There is no bad type, remember? But this tells you what kind of leader your type is, and therefore what kind of things you need for your followers. This is also helpful in how you make decisions. So different people will make different decisions based on the model here. We've talked about this already. And this is how followers normally go. So somebody who's TJ will follow you if your logic makes sense, if you've actually made sure they understood. This is the logic and this is how we're doing it. A TP this is the logic, but this is potentially different contingencies, different ways that we can do it. And FP is, okay, we'll do this together. I will help you. I will support you. I will coach you. And FJs, we need to do this because this is the right thing to do. It's our values. It's our belief system. So this is what's called temperament. When you put the two middle ones together, in the Myers-Briggs type, they call it temperament. So an NT temperament is a rational person. See the big picture, the architect. An F person is the idealist. An SP is an artist, and an SJ is the guardian. Keeps things traditional, keeps things fact-based, keeps things tight on the floor. Now, what I want to move to is from a point of view of the team, at different stages in the team problem solving, different people with different preferences may take the lead. This is what's called the Z model for problem solving. That was originally from Macaulay's, but was then developed out of research done by Guilford, Osborne, and Barnes. And basically what they're saying is that when you're at the beginning, where you're identifying what's the problem, you need the S's. When you're developing the solutions, what are we going to do? How are we going to be in the future? How are we going to fix it? You need the N's. Okay, we've now decided where we are and where we're going to go. Right, how we're going to make this happen is the T, the logical. And then how do we make sure all the people in the team are committed and fully on board with what we're going to do? That's the F. You see the Z? So at each stage, different preferences take the lead. This is roughly how you would practice, how much time you need to invest to make this happen. A lot of time on the logic, of course. I'm just going to go very quickly through this because this is the amount of people who with preferences that adhere to it. But you can see what I was just saying. Clarifying the situation is an S strength. Identifying ideas and solutions is an N strength. Choosing the right option, the logic could dictate that, is the T. And then getting commitment from the team to all play is the F. All clear on this? Okay, so we talked about virtual teams. This is the last thing I want to talk about. This is more and more the future world that we're moving into. How do we work together as a virtual team? And how do we create effectiveness as a virtual team? Here's some ideas. Locations. You know, you can be anywhere in the world. We're thousands of miles away from each other. When are we going to create this team? What's the cost for us not to travel, not to come to meet with you guys, not to eat dinner together, not to meet each other, but to do it like this? More and more pressure to save on the cost. How flexible are we about our time and how we ensure that your needs in your local market are understood by me? I've put in one model to help you, which is think about the technology. How secure is it? Is it something that was selected correct for your IT needs? Is it right for every sort of location? Are you trained in how to use it? Do we understand the processes? Are we all aligned on how things will happen? Is the structure of the meeting clear? Are we all on board with how we do things? Do we know what good performance looks like? And is the team facilitation done right? And the people, you're self-selecting. Are we rewarded by this? Are we getting the training? And are we really clear on the specific objectives, especially the local ones? I just add that in because on the whole, I think Stephen touched on this. It's a very difficult topic, but it's a topic that's very important because of the situation we're in right now. And that is the end of our session. Next week, we're going to be talking about leading change. This is my special topic. A lot of the very senior roles I did where I was going in to do turnarounds of multi-billion-dollar businesses that were failing. And I learned a lot, and I will share that with you. And there's some studies and some items which will be on Zoom, on Minerva, that you could go through. But the critical one that I want you to try and have a look at is have a look at who moved my cheese. Because there's two dimensions to this. One is the change journey an organization or a team goes through. And then there's the individual change journey that the individual goes through. And they are exactly the same. The same things apply. Okay, so we've got a little bit of time, and I'm just going to show you something. Just see if you're interested. I've made some videos on YouTube, actually, about my view. I mean, this is part of my consultancy. You guys don't have to look at this, but it's a 2-minute video. I thought I'd just share that with you so that you understand what I do. I'm going to share with you the one on transformation because it's relevant to the change journey. Hang on. Maybe you have a little laugh. So we end with a laugh. Okay, everybody can see the video?
Yes.
Wonderful. So that's my hobby. I'm a traditional archer. In business, two things never change. One, everything changes. And two, if you don't adapt, you will not stay in business. Managing transformation in a fast-moving world is a highly skilled art. Your whole organization needs to be in perfect balance. Its operating model must come together completely. That's what we do. You need clear accountability and a defined picture of success for KPI owners. You must ensure end-to-end processes and systems, all of them, are both efficient and effective. Will streamline your structure that keeps you close to the market and customers whilst optimizing internal communication and decision making. Then we'll put in place people with the right capability to make it work for you, not just for now, but into the future. Good. Of course, sustaining this requires the right governance and leadership qualities. These must be embedded into a culture that remains right for you as it evolves. We have undertaken many transformation projects. One in particular exemplifies what can be achieved. No easy places.
After 65 years, this Middle Eastern conglomerate had problems with many of its biggest subsidiaries. For example, its gas distribution component was adrift, losing money and market share. OTC oversaw the creation of a holding company, which included shared services with the correct processes in place. We cut costs, appointed a board and a CEO. In addition, the leadership team was reformulated. OTC also managed the turnaround of the gas distribution arm.
The result, a swift return to profit, with revenue up 20% and a 7% boost in market share in just 6 months. When a business model stops working, as happened here, it affects every part of the operation. So each needs to be examined, reformed, and realigned. Just changing one element, like leadership or structure, will only have limited impact.
Would greater clarity and alignment supercharge your efficiency?
Okay. So guys, I just shared that with you as a preparation for next week. It's on my website. I've got a website called ontargetconsultancy.co.uk, which is my consultancy business. And I've made these 2-minute videos on various subjects, including leadership and other things. And I always use the archery as a metaphor. Why do I use archery as a metaphor? Because the new world with the rate of change is exactly like you trying to hit the targets galloping on a horse. The target is moving, you are moving, your resources are changing, the wind is changing. How you hit the target, if you don't mind me saying it, I hope you don't mind me saying it, is very Zen. It's about you being in the flow. Millions of calculations, things happen automatically, and you make yourself lucky because you go out there and you feel your way, not just think your way through issues. There's always this balance. We've been talking about balance throughout the module so far, and it's not going to change. It's about thinking, it's about feeling, it's about facts, it's about possibilities. It's about making judgments, it's about having options. And the way you do that is with a team. The team keeps you safe. The team makes you more than yourself, irrespective of how wonderful you are as a leader. Okay, any final questions? Are we all okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Clear.
Excellent. Excellent. I hope you don't mind me showing you my video. I made it before the COVID hit, and I was supposed to make more, but I can't do it anymore because I can't get access to the horses or whatever. But I do archery, and I've got a sib now here, and I've got about 30 bows and about 1,000 arrows, and I shoot every day.
That's quite cool.
Traditional archery is my thing. Anyway, just thought I'd share that with you so that you know a little bit more about me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. If you're happy to share something about yourself at the beginning of the next session, I'd be very, very happy to know you more. As was the learning from what I learned from Stephen today about virtual teams. I think I'm trying to apply learning. But in the meantime, thank you so much for your attention. I really appreciate it.
It's nothing.
Okay, guys, have a good week, and I'll see you next week. Okay.
See you.
Cheers. Bye
Have a
bye,
nice week.
everybody. You
Take care
too.
of
Have a
yourself.
good week. Cheers.